understand people. Like, this is the biggest investment in life. Like, no one is going to buy a $500,000 thing with the click of a mouse like they would at Amazon.
Right.
They want to go touch it and feel it and smell it. And they just don't want to transact. They want someone to console them when it's time to sign documents and when things go wrong. And just looking at a computer screen is not a comfortable situation when people are going through that type of emotional experience.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast, a show for business owners who set out to do something different and did not stop there. This is Dall'Olmo coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan, the name that inspired the name of this show. With over 18 years of experience in the financial industry, I've heard my fair share of success as well as horror stories in business. On this podcast, I enjoy sitting down with a variety of entrepreneurs to talk about what it takes to build a successful business, including all the ups and downs that come along with doing something different and paving your own way in life. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Matt Theriault. He is the CEO and founder of Epic Real Estate and a Desert Storm veteran, Marine Corps. Since 2003, he has been a full-time real estate professional, building a substantial portfolio without using his own money or credit. Known for his ability to simplify complex concepts and implement systems, Matt has helped countless others achieve success in real estate. Join us today as Matt shares his expertise in creative real estate investing and cash flow strategies. Then we will talk about a simple belief that wealth is achievable for everyone with the right mindset, consistency, and approach. Welcome to the show, Matt. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Derek. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Can you give us and our listeners a little bit of background about your story? How did you get to owning and operating Epic Real Estate? What was that track that took you here?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to your introduction on how you talk to entrepreneurs about their ups and downs, and I have some serious peaks and serious valleys. So this could be I have like an hour version, and I got like maybe a 2-minute version that would leave you with lots of questions. But I'll go through it.
Go somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, right. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent the next 15 years of my life actually in the music business, and I did really well for myself. And this thing called the digital download came along and just kind of turned the whole industry upside down. So at the age of 34, I had to start life over from scratch. I was completely out of business like in 6 fast months. Okay. And what was crazy is at the time, no one had any idea what was actually happening, like why people stopped buying music. And I mean, iTunes wasn't even, I don't think it was even formed yet. It wasn't even an idea. It certainly wasn't a household name by that time.
I was Napster.
And yeah, it was Napster, right? And BitTorrent, I think, was the other thing. That
BitTorrent,
was like
yep.
Or undercover.
And LimeWire.
Gosh, there you go. So all of that was like really embraced by the independent thinking crowd, right? And we made independent hip hop. So we were an independent music label. And the fans of independent stuff, whether it was rock, rap, dance, whatever it was, they embraced that whole digital download and the technology first. And it just obliterated us. I mean, in hindsight, it's crystal clear, but at the time we had no idea. And I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm not in the music business anymore after 15 years. And so I was like, I got to get a job. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds horrible. But
you go work for somebody else? This is terrible.
I know, but I have this thing. I like to eat. So I had to go out and look and found out that I wasn't qualified, quote unquote, for anything because I didn't have any credentials or something like that. Because right out of high school and even while I was in the Marine Corps, I was managing to make a lot of money through music. So I didn't go to do anything else. I didn't, get certified anywhere. I didn't have a degree. And so I became a typist at a temp agency because I could do that really fast. That was something I could test on and I actually excel at. I remember them, the little girl. I mean, she's probably like 10 years younger than me. She goes, "Oh, wow, you're fast." I heard that. We could keep you busy all day long.
Yeah.
I went out looking for other stuff more permanent, looked at selling cars and selling insurance. I went through probably a dozen multi-level marketing companies and then ended up bagging groceries. It was something stable, right?
Yes.
And fortunately, they were on strike. So grocery bagger was making $22 an hour.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I could do this. And hopefully they just stay on strike and da-da-da. But also my reference point to an hourly wage was back when I was 15 years old, where I would get up at 4 a.m. I'd ride my bicycle to the 10-speed. Do they still call them 10 speeds? I ride my 10-speed to the to the golf course where I'd pull all the golf carts out for the golfers. Then I'd go to school and then come back after school, wash all the golf carts, put them back in the garage and plug them back in. And I was making $3.15 an hour then. And so
22 was like shitting in high cotton.
That didn't sound too bad, right? And I was like, okay, well, shoot, it's better than what everything else I've been doing up to this point. And so, I was there for probably 6 months, just really hating life, really bitter time, low time in my life, pointing the finger at everybody and everything. And there was one day where the strike was over. And the grocery store manager came to me and said, Matt, we'd love to keep you. You're a great worker, but now the union takes charge again, and we're going to have to start you at the bottom at $7 an hour.
So grocery store baggers were a union.
Yeah. Well, everybody that works at the grocery store is union.
Okay.
So to get people to cross the picket line, right, that's why they paid them $22 an hour.
Gotcha.
But now that they got that resolved, union comes back in, and that's what unions do is you have to start at your bottom, at the bottom, and work your way up. So I was like, well, gosh, $22 an hour ain't cutting it. $7 certainly ain't going to cut it. And I was pretty depressed, and I had about a week's notice. And the grocery store manager, this was like the big turning point, and this is kind of what we were leading up to, how I got to do what I'm doing now. He was the same age as me. We were both 34. He was only 2 years away from hitting his 20-year mark. He'd been there since he was in high school.
Okay.
He's going to be able to withdraw 70% of his salary for the rest of his life if he chose to retire at that point.
Wow.
And I was like, damn, this guy's almost done, and I'm just starting again. And he showed me he had a photo album. Do you remember what photo albums were, Derek?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Still got a bunch of them that aren't digital.
Pages to look at, run the scroll.
And you could pull them out. You could pull them out of the, the plastic insert.
Yeah. You had to blow the dust off of them and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like such an old guy now by even just saying that, right? My parents were always like, they walked barefoot in the snow type thing.
Oh, yeah. Uphill both ways.
Pictures in a book in the snow.
We I grew up in the slide era, right? So slides with a projector, you go take your take a camera, get it developed, have it put on slides, put it in the big reel, and then you sit down and watch a slideshow.
Everybody gather around, right?
Yep. Gather around, look at all this cool stuff, and then went to pictures, and then now we're digitizing those pictures.
Right. It's awesome. So he had showed me, he had this photo album, and it had a couple apartment buildings that he had taken pictures of. They're like his little children. And he'd been able to acquire those along the way. Very smart and astute of him. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and retire here in 2 years. I'll get 70% of my salary. But the income from these apartment buildings is going to pay me more than what that salary is. And he said these words to me at that moment. He said, Matt, real estate, it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth. And after what I've gone through at that 6, 7, 8 months of soul searching, I was like, well, if it's the final frontier, because I certainly haven't found anything better, I guess that's it for average person, right? So at that point in my life, I was feeling far below average, and to make real wealth. And I really missed my money. I went from I earned the year before that, I had 7 figures of personal income, and now I'm working for $7 an hour. It was like so poetic. You couldn't even drawn that out. And so that's what led me to real estate. And I became an agent I was there for about 3 or 4 years before I realized, if this is where all the money's at, I think I'm sitting on the other side of the desk, or the wrong side of the desk. So
you're the middleman transacting the sale as opposed to the person owning the.
You're a service provider is what you are. Right. You're not really in real estate. And so I had a couple clients that were investors, and I was just able to finally compare my commissions, which were decent because I lived in a nice area, to their profits. And I was like, I want profit. I like that better. Yep. So I made a huge investment in my education. And in 3.5 short years, when someone in that education introduced me to this little book, you probably never heard of it. You might want to write this down. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you heard of this book?
Kiyosaki.
Yeah. So that book was like really transformational. It taught me, there was 2 things I took for, and there's so many people, it's changed the lives of so many. So this is
absolutely, it's a fantastic book.
Totally. It's not a unique story, but there were 2 specific things that I think are a little bit unique. First is I was just introduced to the concept of passive income. right? I mean, I speak English. I can take the word passive and income and put them together and kind of figure out what that means.
Yep.
But man, this is something that just doesn't happen by accident, right? That can be an intention. So that was one thing. And then the second thing was this new definition of wealth. It wasn't having a lot of money in the bank. It was just having enough money that came in each month to pay your bills. And that money coming in, that's not directly tied to your activity.
Not tied to time.
Yep. And so those two things were like, oh, wow. So I was like, I never want to go bag groceries again. So I'm going to do it differently this time. And I'm really going to pursue this passive income and incorporate this rat race escape formula and just focus on passive income and get my expenses down as low as possible, that passive income as high as possible. And in 3.5 years, I had done it. I had successfully escaped the rat race. I did not have to work the next day. And at that point, having experienced both, having a lot of money in the bank and still having to go to work versus not having that much money in the bank and not having to go to work, I actually preferred that second one more.
How does somebody who didn't have a lot of money in the bank acquire properties?
Very good. I forgot to mention that I had to file bankruptcy after the music business too, didn't I?
There's that. Yes.
I told you it could have been an hour-long story. There's a lot of details left out. But yeah, I wasn't lendable either. I wasn't bank-worthy. And so in this education, I was just really drawn to creative financing strategies. Creative acquisitions was the course. And I had like 4 levels of this course. I just embraced it because it was perfect for someone like me. And you found out that the real value in real estate is the person that has the control of the deal.
The deed. Yep.
The money is actually the commodity. The money is everywhere. There's no shortage of money in the system for a good deal. So the real value in any real estate transaction is the person that finds the deal and then controls it. And that was like the foundation of that knowledge. And there's so many different ways to negotiate and control deals. And then it was easy to go out and find the money. So that's how I was able to do it.
So can you walk us through that first deal? You know, you've been an agent, you know, you've gone through the creative financing kind of education side. How did you structure that first deal? And how did you get that, let's say, counterparty to trust you?
Perfect. So this is the first one. And then like the first and second were like same concept, but wildly different, but the same concept. So just it can give you a range of what can happen and everything in between. So the first one was the mentor. They had this concept or this theory, I don't know, whatever it was. It was to move at the speed of instruction. So you learn a little and you go do it, right? And you learn a little bit more and you go do it. And they would say, like, travel as far as you can see. When you get there, you'll see further.
Yep.
And the quote they always use was the Martin Luther King quote. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step, right? And that second step is so much easier to reach if you're standing on the first one rather than at the bottom of the floor. So that's
such a great quote too, because it's so true.
Yeah, it made all the sense in the world to me. I was like, okay, I got it. So mentor said, I want you to drive up and down the streets and write down the addresses of all the houses that look like they need some work. They're distressed or vacant, or, you know, look for weeds, look for, you know, bad roofs, look for bad paint jobs, look for, you know, broken windows, look for all that stuff and just write those addresses down and bring them back to the office. I said, all right, move at the speed of instruction. Let's just go do it. I had no idea. So I just went and started writing, kind of feeling like I might have been being duped. Like, oh, I'm just the gopher that's doing this work for free, right?
Yeah, you're going to go give deals to somebody else.
Exactly. So I wrote down a bunch and he said, okay, so now we're going to look them all up. So you could look up per the county. You could find who owned them. But there was one that stood out. I was like, well, this one looked like a piece of crap. And it actually had a for sale sign on it. And the for sale sign was like in worse shape than the actual house. Like, and he says, and I said, I got the number. So we called that one. And that's the one that eventually turned out to be the deal. It had been there for a long time. It was some fix and flippers that ran out of money. And it was just sitting there deteriorating, like half built. And he says, okay, so write an offer. And then that freaked me out because I was like,
how do I do that?
Exactly. Well, it wasn't even how to do that, but I don't have any money. Like, what if they say yes? What am I going to do then? He says, move at the speed of instruction. So I wrote the offer and it came back with a counter and we worked out the number. He says, so counter back. So I counter back and then it got accepted. I was like, okay, now what? I'm like, you going to give me the money for this? He says, no, you have a deal now. You have an asset. You have the ace in the hole. We have a good deal under contract. Now this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to all of the networking events. You're going to look online and look at all the networking events. So like there was like the Chamber of Commerce, and then there was like this BNI group, and then there was a real estate investor group. We went on meetup.com. There's a bunch of real estate groups there, entrepreneur groups. And he said, this is what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going, when they ask you to introduce yourself, because that's what we were looking for. Those opportunities when you go to one of those networking groups and they ask you to introduce yourself. You're going to introduce yourself. You're going to tell them what you do, who you help, what you got for them, and if they want it, how to get it. Those are the three things. So I remember it was like, hi, my name is Matt. Nice to meet you all. I show busy professionals how to build a real estate portfolio in their spare time so they can retire early. And today I have this deal, and it's 40% below market value. The plans are already in place. It just needs to be rebuilt. It needs about $60,000 of rehab. And after it's all done, it'll be worth about $400,000. And if you want more information on this deal and others just like it, meet me in the back room. I'll be happy to give you a flyer. So that was it. 45-second speech. And it was like, that's it. And so at the end of the meeting went on as normal. In the meeting, I went and sat in the back of the room and waited for see if anyone was come up. And a couple people came up, and long story short, I found a person, was a contractor, and had the ability to get the money. He liked the deal, and we partnered on it. And he built the whole thing. We sold it, and I made $26,000.
And in the big picture, how long did this take you from, kind of learning at the speed of instruction to closure of deal and getting paid for it?
Yep.
I
would say it only took me about a week. Once I got the contract, it only took me a week to find the person with the money, this partner.
Okay.
Steve. It was Steve and Steve. It was two Steves. And so I got the money. They went to work because the permit was already in place because they were previous fix and flippers. They already had approval by the city. Like didn't have to wait for any time like that. So they could start working right away. And they did. And I would say it was probably 45 days to build the house. And then it only took like 2 weeks to sell it. And then 30 days to close. So I don't know, what, 3 months, 4 months.
How much of that do you attribute to luck versus grind? The reason I ask about luck is because you stumbled onto this Steve and Steve, who already were kind of way ahead in the pipeline of being able to kind of circumvent a number of things that the city would have, Joe Schmo do. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, that's lucky that that you stumbled upon them or they stumbled upon you, but it was because of here's the work that you put in to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, was it really luck? Right, that's the big question.
Right.
But I went out to see the people.
Correct.
Right, I didn't have a contract. Just kind of waited in my office for someone to walk by.
You had the deal.
That would have been.
You had the deal. You had the deal in your hand.
Yep, I had the asset. Right, yep. So when you have the asset, that's what attracts money. It attracts people. It attracts buyers and lenders and sellers and joint venture partners and stuff like that. So when you have the asset, that's the hard part of real estate. So I didn't realize at the time that I got the hard part done. And then it was very easy moving downwards because, if you had 50 cents in your hand and I got $1 and I said, hey, Derek, I'll trade you. You'd be like, okay.
All right. Sure.
That's what it's like having a deal in your hand. I got the $1 and you're going to give me 50 cents. So when you would turn that down, that had 50 cents to give.
Right. When at the end of the deal, was that $26,000? Was that an even 50-50 profit split or was there
No, it was just 10%.
Okay.
I got 10% of the profit.
Okay.
It was a big deal. It sold for, I think, $725,000. It's 1050 Newport Avenue. It's in Long Beach, California.
Okay.
It is still there, and it's actually the same owner. I looked it up about a month ago.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So, and for reference of listeners, how long ago was this?
That would have been in 2005-ish.
Okay.
Yep.
2000. Wow. So really, let's see here.
So it's at 21 years ago?
Yeah.
Or 19 years ago.
19 years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
First one worked. And I was just like, oh, I get it. And so I've just kind of operated ever since. And maybe it was a little lucky that that was my first experience because it established the mindset and nothing can stop me moving forward. Like I had evidence, I had proof. You know what I mean?
You had a success,
Mm-hmm.
because if it went the other way,
Yeah, it could have been awful. I mean, it's happened for a lot of people, but that just made sense. I didn't have to get ready to get ready. I had this move at the speed of instruction mentality. And then the big epiphany was, though, oh, I have a signed contract. I'm the one with the power.
yes.
Right? You find the deal, the money will find you, is like kind of where I've operated from ever since.
Did that original contract that you had signed, did you have to put money in escrow for that?
Yes, but I had 7 days to do it.
Okay.
Right? So I had a 7-day free look to go find a buyer that would put the money in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you said your first two deals happened at this close to the same time, but very different. Can you run through the second deal and give a kind of compare and contrast?
Sure. So now actually to what you're saying was it luck. It was easy to where it made the next one probably more difficult than it had to be.
Gotcha.
Because I was like, oh, I could just do that anytime I want. And then, kicked back a little bit, spent some of that money. And I was like, okay, well, it's time to start going to work now. Let's just go find another deal. And that next deal was much more difficult. It probably took 7 or 8 months before I got my next deal. It was a long time. But what had happened was by me going through these networking events, I always had a deal. Here's my little hack was I'd go to Craigslist to find houses that were for sale by owner. And I would just call up the owner and say, hey, I'm going to go to this event tonight. There's probably going to be a lot of people there that might be interested in your property. If I found a buyer for you, would you have room for a referral fee in it for me? And they all said, oh, hell yeah, for sure. Cool. So I would always create a little flyer, but with that person's property. And so every time I went, it was kind of a pretend deal.
Sure.
Right? Because I'd learned that lesson the very first time. So these were just kind of pretend deals. And what that did by me going around and around and around to all of these groups and doing that same thing is I kind of developed a reputation for, oh, this is the guy that's always got a deal. This is the hustler out there. This is the guy you want to work with. And once you become a little bit recognizable in that group and you're a familiar face on Thursday nights or whatever it was, that activity, it attracts people to you. It attracts money, mm-hmm. Buyers, sellers, attracts partners. And there was one guy who came to me and he says, you know what? I have these 35, I'm in Southern California. And I've got these 35 properties I own in Danville, Illinois. Do you think you could sell those for me? I see you out here and I think if you just went and represented, we could eventually get them all done. And I was like, move at the speed of instruction, right? I said, yes.
Danville, Illinois, I'm going there.
Okay. So I never been to Danville, Illinois. Okay. Never been. But I did put all 35 of those properties under contract. I coordinated with his property manager that was managing the properties there. They sent me everything I needed. They sent me the photographs and all the specs on everything, all the numbers and the books and everything. And I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and sell half of these and keep half for myself. Well, in Southern California, houses there at the time were $300,000, $400,000 was kind of the median price point.
These were what, $80,000, $90,000?
In Danville, Illinois, they're about $40,000.
Okay.
All right. So that turned out to be kind of an easy sale. Like people were taking 2 or 3 at a time of these cash flowing assets. So I was able to do that and then arrange seller financing on the balance. So I was able to sell half to raise the down payments to buy the other half.
Genius. So is there a term for, I'm going to say this type of, the first couple of deals and these deals that you did, is there an industry term that you say, hey, this is, not a fix and flip, but when you got a deal in hand, is there a term that explains that?
Yeah, I would say that like the first one, it could be defined as kind of wholesaling, but I really just found joint venture partners.
Okay.
I could have easily just wholesaled that contract for 10, 15 grand and just been out of it. But again, sometimes your naivete, right? Your ignorance is actually an asset. So that's just kind of how I did it. And that probably got me a few more bucks.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? So
Exactly. And then
and that's the term I was looking for, wholesaling.
Okay. Yeah, it would be, but I was a partner in the whole thing. So I guess I kind of declassified as that, but I could have done it both ways now that I know what I know.
Yeah, the activity that got you to the partnership was essentially wholesaling, and then it became transition from wholesaling to a partnership once you and the partner agreed upon terms.
Yep, exactly. And so the next one was it started off the same way. I just put them all under contract. I intended to wholesale them, but I had that little purple book, right? How do I create streams of cash? This is a great opportunity. And I saw how cheap they were. I was like, I should be able to do this, because if I sold, 15 of them, that would be, I make five. I think I was making $4,000 a pop on those. So I was like $40,000. If I could spread that across a few properties and get seller financing for the rest, then that would be that. And so that was kind of a combination, I guess, of both.
And so, mid 2000s, how open were people to seller financing at that time?
Well, these were 35 properties owned by one person.
Oh, so the seller was that one.
Seller was financing me. Yeah.
Okay.
So no, he got it. He just didn't want to be a landlord anymore from a distance. And, he was older, and he saw the hustle, right, that I exhibited. And then I was able to sell half of them, get him the cash for those. And he was like, okay, I'll do that for you. So it was good.
That's great. And so that was now you now own 15 properties, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
How did you then take the next step to, did you then leverage those yourself, or did you still continue on the same kind of wholesaling to partnership track?
Yeah. So being born and raised in fifth generation from Southern California, I didn't know there were other parts of the country where houses cost $50,000.
Welcome to the Midwest.
That was like a whole new world to me. And it was kind of a little bit of a crutch, because looking back, I wish I would have just stayed in Los Angeles and done it, because the same activity, the same work, all the same effort, no additional risk would have made me a whole lot more money, a lot faster. Just bigger price point, bigger profits. But it just seemed easy to me. Like, I can do this. And I saw how easy those things were to sell. When someone's used to paying $300,000, $400,000 for a house, and they see that they can get one for $50,000, and they say, give me 3. How many can I get? Give me 4. Okay, I'll take 2. Right. And so I went to, had a friend in Memphis, Tennessee, that I went to visit, and they were great. I mean, the houses down there were $50,000. They rented for $750 a month. And that was just like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that actually established the second half of our company. Is called Cash Flow Savvy. So we do turnkey real estate investments.
Okay.
So we go out and we buy houses, we fix them up, we put the tenants in place, we coordinate the property management, and then we sell them as cash producing assets.
Yep, you got the deal.
We got the deal.
There you go.
But it's performing. Like, we're delivering the desired end result. And when you can deliver the end result in any service, like, that's what people really want. They want the finished thing. And when you can deliver that, that's when you get to really charge a premium.
And they don't want to have to go to the networking events to find
exactly
the things that they just want to be able to, hey, here, take my money. I've got a cash flowing property. Do you stop there, or do you say, okay, tenant's coming up for renewal, or, moving on?
Well, we found out really quickly, because our clientele is very cliche. It was doctors, it was lawyers, it was CPAs, it was high paying sales positions like pharmaceutical sales and medical device sales. So people that made a lot of cash but just got crushed by taxes. So that turned out to be our primary clientele. And we discovered that if we can make the management go smoothly, they'll continue to buy.
Yes.
If they had an issue, they're like, take it back. I don't ever want to do this again. Right? So although we're not officially, and we've kept this model in place ever since, we've kind of learned that pretty darn quickly in the first 4 or 5 months. Like, oops, this is not as easy as we thought. But we quickly changed course, or pivoted, right, and became a management liaison. So we help them manage the property managers. Okay. So that's what we do. They're still responsible. It's 100% their deal, but they just don't want to be bothered with it. And they don't want to hear phone calls that come in, and they don't come in a lot, but for that type of person, one is too many.
Yeah. And when they do, it's a crisis, right?
It's a crisis. Yes. Oh my gosh. A water heater busted.
What do we do?
Yes. The sky is
Call a handyman, or call an HVAC company, get them over there, inform the tenant. It's not hard, but it's like, well, I've got all these other things to do.
Correct. And those houses that we were selling for 50, 60 grand at that time, they're all worth 150, 160 now. So,
18 years, you double, triple the price.
Not to mention the depreciation, not to mention the tax deductions, not to mention the cash flow that they got along the way. I'm sure for most people is their best performing asset over the last decade.
Until they sell it, if they ever sell it. Depreciation recapture is a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't think you should ever sell those, my opinion.
No, I completely agree. People with the rental properties, I'm like, what's your plan for this? They're like, oh, sell it, when I retire. I was like, how about you let your kids inherit it when you die?
Yes.
And because there's this thing called depreciation recapture, which will kick you in the proverbial nuts if you're not ready for it.
For sure. And then they have this other great thing where you can just keep borrowing against it tax-free.
It's weird.
The refi till you die strategy, right?
Yep. What's the BRRRR? Buy, refinance, or buy, renovate, rent, refinance.
Yeah, there you go. Bunch of R's.
So bunch of R's. It's BRRRR, whatever. I see it all the time on social media. This is different, obviously, but it's that's the one that's being, at least for the last 2 years, has always been floated out there on social media. BRRRR.
That's your acquisition and build strategy, right?
Yep.
Your wealth preservation and legacy strategy is buy, borrow, die.
The best way to do it, because then the tax man doesn't come and kick you in the teeth.
Yeah, and then your kids don't have that depreciation issue.
No, they get a step up in basis.
Yep. The
depreciation goes away.
Yep.
You're good.
It's very good.
It is very good. But, what percentage of people do it that way? Not a lot.
Even the good, this is one thing I learned from going to all those networking events. You'll find the old seasoned, crusty real estate investors in those groups. And you ask them if they're going to do it all over again. Without a doubt, all of them say, I wish I would have bought more and sold less.
Yep.
Every single one of them. And so Mark Twain's got a good quote. Learn from other people's mistakes because you won't be here long enough to make them all on your own.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that is how we learn too. Yes, we learn some from our successes, but it makes us more, I'm going to call it confident and arrogant, because it worked this way before, so it's going to work this way again. But as you've probably done hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of deals, right?
1,000.
How many of them are the same?
Oh, there's a lesson in every single one of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my point. Is every one of them is going to have something come up that you didn't, you thought you planned for everything, but there's always going to be something that comes up. You're like, shit, didn't see that coming, and everybody's got a scenario. Everybody's got an excuse, and you learn from that one and it makes you better for the next one.
Yep. Laws change, policies change. Then you got people.
Every 4 years.
That's the biggest variable. I would say the real estate, that's the safe and easy part. It's the people that insert the risk.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Because everybody's got an idea of what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
This is a cash flowing asset. I'm a doctor. I own 15 properties, around the nation. Great. What do you know about them? Absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look back on your last, 19, 20 years, what are you most proud of? Like when you look back on, I'm sure you've had monetary success. I'm sure you've had kind of education success, et cetera, of teaching people. What are you most proud of? What can you point to as your biggest successes?
I think that's funny. I've been on a lot of podcasts. I've never been asked that question in that way. What am I most proud of? That seems like a very basic question, but I think the fact that I come from a family of civil servants, right? A lot of police officers, firefighters. I got some aerospace engineers that worked for the government. So a very traditional 9 to 5 conservative family employment, the family values and stuff like that. I'm the only entrepreneur in the whole group. So I think there's a lot of truth. Kind of, we circle back to Rich Dad Poor Dad, that rich people teach their kids to be rich and poor people teach their kids to be poor. And it's not intentional either way, probably. It's just by way of
Look at your environment.
The kids get to see what their parents do. And so I have a 13-year-old now, and now he gets to experience something that I never experienced. And maybe that keeps the legacy going, right? He understands that, it's better to have a stream of money than it is to save money.
And it's no longer about you.
Mm-hmm.
It is about you, but it's like secondarily legacy. It impacts your kids, potentially your grandkids.
I've done well for myself. So, there's that self-actualization part of it.
Of course.
But I think, if you ask me what am I most proud of, I think it's like, I broke the cycle. Maybe that's it.
Yeah. In your own family. Yeah.
Yeah. I do have several students that I can think of 3 or 4 of them right now off the top of my head that I know are far more successful than I am now. That they've just went, right? And so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I had a guy actually from Michigan, or probably close to you somewhere. I don't know exactly which part on the hand, but he's up there somewhere, and he flew out in the middle of last year. He'd actually called me. We've been working together for a couple of years. Corporate guy. He's actually a Dave Ramsey student before we met.
Okay.
And so he was able to get himself entirely debt-free, and then he was listening to my podcast, and it said, I've been doing the Dave Ramsey thing, and now what he wants me to do now that I got out of debt, it's going to take me forever to get rich. It's like, I want to now do something else. So that's how we first met, and that's how we bonded. And so we were together for a couple of years, and he called me in the middle of last year and says, after our program was over, but I still kind of leave the lights on for everybody, especially my rock stars and the people that are actually doing the work. And he called me, and I was like, hey, what's up? And he goes, hey, I want to know if I could buy a day of your time. I'm like, buy a day? No, you just come out. Which day you want to come out? So he flew out, and he spent the day with me. But in the first part that we were there, I said, okay, so what's up? Why did you have to fly out? And what did you want to, why does it have to be face to face? And I could have helped you with anything. He says, well, I've got 3 fix and flips in progress right now. I've got about $500,000 in the bank. I have 8 properties that are producing cash flow. And I just wanted to know if it's okay if I quit my day job. And I was like, that's it? You could have asked me over the phone. He says, I know, but my wife wanted me to fly out here to see your face when I asked it, to make sure that you're telling me the truth.
And that's smart, because you can read a lot from body language.
Mm-hmm. And I said, well, hell yeah, I don't know anybody that's in better position to quit their day job than someone like yourself that has active projects. You're making money consistently. You've got some income coming in, and you got a big giant cash reserve, a huge cash reserve. And for where you live, that's a ginormous cash reserve.
Yeah.
Right? And I said, yes. And he says, okay, thank you. And I said, okay, what's next? He goes, that was it. And so we proceeded to go out
and left,
eat and get drunk all day. But
eat and get drunk, play some golf, call it good.
Exactly. So that was a good day. But those types of moments, I guess if there was a second answer to your question, what am I most proud of? It would probably be stuff like that.
Giving people the confidence and the know-how to get, to break their own cycle. His cycle was corporate America, right? Clock in, clock out, do this, do that. Didn't want to do it anymore. Needed confirmation that he was doing the right thing and had enough.
Yep. He's got 6 kids, a wife, homeschools. So that's going to trickle down to 6 other people.
Yeah. Yep. That's a huge impact.
For sure.
So, completely on the flip side of that, what's been, like you asked, the old crusty real estate guys, if you can do something differently, what have been your biggest struggles, and what would you do differently moving forward? Knowing, now.
Same thing, right? I wish I would have bought more. I haven't sold a whole lot. We have here recently, we had to sell a lot of our assets to get through COVID, right? Because couldn't go outside and stuff like that. So that was kind of sad, but we're building it back. But I've pretty much held the whole time. I think my biggest regret was waiting too long to do the big deals. And we kind of touched on that. Like I was
So meaning instead of doing the 50, 60, $100,000 deals, the 700 million, 2 million, $10 million deals.
Yeah. In hindsight, I mean, if they were just, I stayed in LA and did $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 deals, or I just added a zero, 1 0 to it.
Mm-hmm.
I could have made as much money by doing maybe just 30% of the work.
Okay.
So if I would have like done half the work, I would have made even more. So I wished I wasn't so afraid or shy of the zeros early on, because it is no more effort. In fact, it's probably easier to do the bigger deals, especially if you need the money. Because, if you're trying to raise 50 grand, 100 grand to do a deal, for the people that have to give it to you, they kind of fall in two categories. It's a lot of money for them. It's all the money in the world. Or it's not enough money for them to even get out of bed over. Right? Those are kind of the two people you meet. And so you'll find, and then you'll also find that the people that have the money, where they would rather be in bigger deals, that they part with it much easier. The people that gave you their last 50 grand or the 100 grand they had in a 401k or something like that, and they let you borrow that, or they self-direct it to you, that's their whole life and their whole future. And now they're freaking out and they're high maintenance. They call you all the time and they're like, are we done yet? When is it going to happen? What's going on? Everything okay? So you have that issue to deal with. But on the bigger money, it's like, okay, sure. How much you need? All right. So where do you want me to wire it? Very good. When I get it back, fantastic. I'll send over the documents and I'll just get the wire this afternoon. And like, no big deal.
Yep.
And so I wish I would have known that world existed much earlier on.
Yeah. Cause I mean, like you said, there's a different set of expectations with what you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. I mean, you brought up before, the rich people teach their kids how to be rich. Poor people teach their kids how to be poor, right? Yep. There's that same mindset when it comes to money. When you're dealing with somebody with money, it's like, okay, I've got this money. Money is, doing something for me, whether that's, creating a safety net or it's in the stock market, whatever. But it could be doing more. And, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because the enemy of good is always better. But, now they feel like they have something they can control, something they can touch, something that if they kick it, it hurts. Whereas, anything on NBC, it's like, yeah, that's paper money. It's funny money. It's paper.
Yeah. I was just driving in today and the news flash, I guess they settled Trump's defamation suit with ABC or whatever. And they did it
15 million or something.
Yeah, 16, 17 million. It's just like, that was like just such small money for ABC just to hit a button. Let's just get this over with. All right. We don't even want to go to court and mess with this thing. And it was like, what's seems really distant and complicated to you is child's play for someone else.
Yep. And it's funny how there's always that. It's like, there is no top level to that. It's like, people look at, Elon Musk is worth, 450 billion. And, he's the richest man in the world. There's something above him. We just, it's not publicized. I mean,
have you heard him answer that question, who he thinks has more money than him?
I heard it, but I forgot the answer.
Oh, he thinks Putin has more money than him.
Yeah. That's what it is. Putin. Yeah. But, and then there's always, the Rothschilds and all those things, but none of that is public knowledge at all. Putin probably does have more money than him, and probably a lot of government officials do. It's just hidden, especially in governments like Russia.
Yep. Musk is like, I can't build a nuclear arsenal. It's like,
he's doing it like that, and he's doing it like you with other people's money.
Yeah, totally. Totally. There's a great this was maybe 10 years ago or so. It was Chris Rock special, stand-up special. And he said something like, there's rich and then there's wealthy. There's rich and there's wealthy. Oprah, she's rich. But if Bill Gates woke up tomorrow and his bank account looked like Oprah's, he'd jump out the window and commit suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just, it just puts everything into perspective. So the small little problems that you're dealing with that feel big to you, it's just like child's play to somebody else.
Yep. And it's always the case. And there's always somebody that knows or has been through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, when you are talking to, or I'm going to say in discussions with a potential new investor, how do those conversations go? What expectations are you setting?
Well, I really don't set any expectations until I have the deal and I know what the deal is going to produce.
Okay.
Then I want to find out what that investor really needs. Most of the investors now that come into my world don't give a darn about the cash flow. They want the upside on equity, and then they would love to take the depreciation.
Huh. See, I would have thought it was completely the opposite.
Yeah, no.
I mean, the depreciation side I get, but
they got the money. Like, what, an extra $500 a month? What is that really going to do for them? You know what I mean? Like, to them, that's.
I mean, if you do it, 100 or 1,000 times,
true,
it's a lot of money.
True, but there's just other things, like they've got different types of problems, right?
Fair. Yep.
They're trying to solve something else.
Because there was that. What was that song? More money, more problems.
Right. So that setting those expectations, it's first like, okay, what is this deal? What can it produce? And then what do they need? And then kind of to just design it that way. But I let everybody know that I hold long term. Like, if you're going to give me money and you want your money back in 6 months, I'm not the guy for you. You should not work with me at all. But if you want to get a nice consistent 10, 12% return annually and just leave it parked there, then I'm your ideal person to work with. So that's probably first level one of expectations. Because what happens all the time, and I'm tired of it, sounds like this is definitely a first world rich man's problem, right? But when someone does give me a loan, say for 6 months, and I give it back to them, the first thing they do is they just want to give it right back to me and say, go do it again. I was like, well, we could have just left it there, and I could have done a different project with it that I would have rather done, So I don't like the idea of like, give me 6 months, I give you the money back, then you give it right back to me, and it just goes back and forth in 6 month intervals. That's what I call scared money. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's just money. It comes with emotional baggage and maintenance attached to it. That's all.
So in the very beginning, you brought up the idea of passive income, in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything that I've seen over my career, is that real estate investing is anything but passive. How do you make it passive?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think that the big confusion is most people think, or they confuse passive income with uninvolved income. Right. So wherever you put your money, you better be involved.
Absolutely.
There's no magic place you can just park it and then money falls from the sky every month and you don't ever have to do anything. You got to manage it, right? So what we've done is we've just built a system where we don't manage property. We manage the property managers.
Okay.
And so
then you people.
Mm-hmm, who manage the properties, right?
Property, correct.
So we've built some good systems in place. First is, like, in every market, we want to have at least 2 property managers, and we want to make sure that they know about each other. So that just kind of puts an inadvertent sense of competition.
Mm-hmm.
Just that.
Or not screw this up.
Exactly. Just that alone will kind of keep your expenses lower on the average and your performance higher on the average. And then we have our bookkeeper, who they send the reports to, our statements every month, and she'll review them. And her job is to call the property manager once a month and question something on the statement. Even if she already knows all the answers, call and confirm something on the statement, just to let them know we're watching, right? It's not to micromanage. It's not to break on them. It's just to say, hey, checking in. I got the statement. Thank you. Are you sure this was $100 for this? Okay, thanks. That's it, right?
Yep. That
phone call. So there's that. And then the other part that's made it easy or easier, because no system is perfect, but that is those two things have crushed a lot. The other part is we don't negotiate our property managers' fees. If they want 8%, 10%, 12% of what's collected, we just give it to them. So, okay, no problem. Because here's what we've discovered over the years is that a landlord's incentives and a property manager's incentives are not in alignment.
No.
So if you start negotiating their fees and taking money away from them, it can build resentment. And you find out that your properties might be the last ones to be filled when they go vacant. You'll find that your properties break down a little bit more than the others. And those repairs cost a little bit more than they would normally. So that's another thing, because when that property is performing and just doing perfectly for the landlord, that's when the property manager is making the least amount of money. When something breaks and it's all hell for the landlord, that's when the property manager is making the most amount of money. So you have to just kind of work with human nature, and you don't want to mess with what's natural, that naturally incentivizes a human being.
Sure.
Regardless of how you feel about money, most people are money motivated if they're running their own business. Definitely. So those are like three little things that we've put in place that have made it much more passive than I know how other people's experiences are.
And that makes sense. I mean, it all comes back to, what you said originally. It's all about people. So I mean, you find the right property management person or company, group of people, keep those people happy. They keep these other people happy. They keep everybody happy and moving in the right direction. They're all aligned.
Yep, for sure. It's a people business, right? I mean, every business really is a people business, but real estate, I think that's why technology has had, like, for example, Zillow has had such a rough time replacing the real estate agent for so long. Because, boy, they have tried like hell to do that. But
they have lost a ton of money trying to do it.
Totally. But at the end of the day, if you understand people, like, this is the biggest investment in life. Like, no one is going to buy a $500,000 thing with the click of a mouse like they would at Amazon.
Right.
They want to go touch it and feel it and smell it. And they just don't want to transact. They want someone to console them when it's time to sign documents and when things go wrong. And just looking at a computer screen is not a comfortable situation when people are going through that type of emotional experience.
Yeah, because generally speaking, if they're doing this for their first time, $500,000, they're not in a position where $500,000 is a drop in the bucket.
Right.
So that comes with a bigger emotional attachment.
Yep. People, that's the biggest purchase they'll ever make.
Yep.
So
for somebody who is considering, walking down this path of real estate ownership, et cetera, what kind of advice would you give? Call it a novice, somebody who's never done it before. What do you want to look out for, and how can somebody benefit from this?
First statement I'll make, and with a certain crowd, it's a very unpopular statement, but I really believe that houses right now are as affordable as they will ever be. Might have a little bump here and there, but it ain't going backwards.
Why do you say that?
I say that.
Well, let's just, just as a quick aside.
First, there's multiple levels to this. First, it never has. Right? There's never, ever been a bad time to buy real estate. Just a bad time to sell it.
Correct.
There's never been a bad time to buy. So I'll say, first of all, it never has. So people say history always repeats itself. Well, if history always repeats itself, it's always going to go up. Right? So there's the first thing. The second thing is the reason I don't think there's going to be any sort of significant dip or crash, which is very different that we've never, ever experienced in this country before that exists right now, is we just have so many more people than we have houses. In 2007, 2008, when everything crashed, we were significantly overbuilt.
Yes.
And because we were overbuilt and because so many builders and fix and flippers got demolished, they took a whole decade off.
Yep.
But what happened with the people and the population during that decade? It kept growing. And so now we're at a point where there's such a huge deficit, I don't think we'll ever catch up. Not in our lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it'll take generations to do it.
Yeah, it'll take at least a decade of record building.
Correct.
And right now, if you look at the builder confidence levels, knowing this information, looking at the builder confidence levels, they're regressing. Because houses are too expensive to build for them to resell and make a profit. So now they're like, well, that's not a good option for me. Why would I want to do that type of business? It's going to cost me more than what it's going to be worth when I'm all done building it. And so there's the deficit in the supply. Then when you look at the people, so right now the peak age of the millennial, I think, is 34, 35 years old. So there's more 34-year-olds walking the planet than any other age. So let's just say that's the number. It's right there somewhere. I've been saying this for a couple of years, so I might have switched a little bit. But the average first-time home buyer was just adjusted last year to 36. So over the next 24, 48 months, we're going to see more demand for housing than we've ever seen in the history of the country. And then right behind them, you've got Gen Z? Z, which is a bigger population than the millennials.
Yeah.
So it's like the demand is built in. It's already walking the earth. It's not like we have to, what is Japan just said they turned all females' work weeks into 4-day work weeks to give them an extra day a week to procreate. That's not our problem here. And then you look at we had 12.5 million people come over the southern border in the last 4 years, whatever the number is, however you feel about it.
Who knows what the actual number is? We'll never know.
They need a roof too, is my point, right? They need somewhere to live. And then the other thing that we've never experienced before is the massive corporate demand of how many now new home builders aren't really building them to sell anymore. They're building them to rent because they know what I'm sharing with you right now. But the masses are still saying, oh, it's going to crash. It's going to go crazy. It's like, well, you can follow and look what the smart money is doing because they all disagree with you or else they wouldn't keep on buying these houses. Or you can follow the dumb money and the trolls on YouTube or screaming crash, 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 and you can get what they got. So, I mean, I look at it that way. It's very, very simple and plain to me. So all of that to say, this is as cheap and as easy it's going to get. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that you really don't stand a chance at any sort of financial freedom unless you incorporate real estate somewhere into your financial plan. The Federal Reserve, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? And this is a simple Google search will give you all the data you need to know about it. But they're not consensus. What was it? The ultimate answer that they came up with is the average homeowner is 40 times wealthier than the average renter. 40 with just one home.
Wow.
Do you see it?
I mean, that's
okay. I believe it's the Federal Reserve that said that. Federal Reserve, 40 times wealthier.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is. A homeowner's net worth. Here's Housing Finance Authority of Miami-Dade County. Yeah, there's a lot of places that have republished the Federal Reserve's findings. So you'll find it on a bunch of different places.
Yeah, this is just Gemini coming through on Google Chrome.
AI agrees.
Yeah, according to recent data, the average homeowner is around 40 times wealthier than someone who does not own a home, with the median net worth of a homeowner being $400,000 compared to just $10,400 for renters. Meaning the wealth gap between them is substantial.
Yep. And so when you look at the supply and demand, you look at the immigration, you look at the corporate purchasing, and you consider the saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. You want a boat in the water, at least one.
And it can be your primary residence. And if you want to do more, you've got, dinghies, you've got yachts, you've got mega yachts, you've got all these things.
If you can, refinance out of your any real estate that you own to buy a second one, and it's not going to cost you more than the debt costs you, then I think that's one of the best moves you can make investment wise.
Yep.
If you got 2, 3, 4 of those boats in the water, I think you'll be just fine. So those are my two things that I would give to like a beginner. If you have to understand those two things, and you have to keep all the negative media out of your head because those dynamics are not changing.
Love it. Great. I mean, they're great. They're not just. It's not just good advice. It's practical and it's remarkably simple.
Mm-hmm. If you look at supply and demand, when we're just talking, say, Pokemon cards,
the
price goes up when there's high demand for it. Yeah, you look at the next Yeezy shoes, right? There's only 5,000 made, and that's why they sell for $700 each, because the demand, supply and demand. Everybody gets supply and demand in those dynamics. Everybody understands that part. My wife, I love cherries, right? And it's off season for cherries right now. My wife just paid $7 a pound for cherries last night. because the supply is so low right now, right? So everybody gets supply and demand, but when you put it to the housing market, everyone throws it all out the window. No, doesn't work. No, that doesn't happen.
This is different.
This is different. Yes.
So it's funny you mentioned you love cherries. Mm-hmm. Traverse City, where I live, is the cherry capital of the world.
Oh, is it really? Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we have a huge festival every summer, the Cherry Festival.
Nice.
So, you know, it's concerts and all the things, but
that's awesome.
It's all cherry orchards up here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
it's cool.
Take what you want with it. I'm not an agent. It doesn't impact me whether you buy or not. I see the writing on the wall, and I'm looking at it. Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men in the world, just came out of retirement and started a single family housing fund. Mm-hmm. Why would he do that? Does he need to just buy some houses to make some extra money?
Yeah, he's got all the money he needs. What does he need to do?
No, he sees a serious upside by owning a bunch of single family houses.
Even after a divorce.
Yes, even after. Yeah, he's got to make it all back, right?
I got to make up that, $100 billion. Mm-hmm. But, all right, well, as we kind of wrap up things, are there any other messages you want to leave to listeners? Tell them how to get in touch with Epic, et cetera.
Sure. I just wrote a book this year. It's called Escape. And if you go to Amazon, it's $19. But if you go to myescapebook.com, it's only $4. And I'll give you a free course that Robert Kiyosaki, Mr. Rich Dad, asked me to make for his community. And he said I could give it away free with my book. So if you got $4, grab the book, and then you get the free Rich Dad course that I made for him.
MyEscapeBook.com. So get Escape plus 3 bonuses worth $14.33.
There you go. All for $4.
All for $4.
And if you just want the free stuff, then if you're listening to Derek's show, then you could probably find my show, the Epic Real Estate Investing Show. It's the longest running real estate show on the podcast webs.
That's awesome.
Started in 2009 when you had to explain to people what a podcast was.
We're explaining to people right now, too, what slides and photos are as well.
This is true. So, yep. I'll come back around.
It's, those of us in the, older millennial or Gen X stage, it's different. It's a different world.
It's like we're all born in diapers and we all die in diapers.
Like you said, history repeats itself. Oh, all right. Well, as you know, my name is Derek Dall'Olmo. I'm the owner of Tramonte Financial Consultants and Tramonte Tax Solutions, together referred to as Tramonte. Tramonte bridges the gap between financial advisors and accountants by serving as CFO to our clients. We specifically love to work with business owners to develop a proactive tax strategy that maximizes after-tax profits. It's our job to help you earn more, be more efficient, grow faster, and pay as little in taxes as legally possible. This idea piques your interest, please go to TramonteTax.com, click on the Schedule Now button to book a 15-minute chat with moi. With all that said, Matt, it was really good talking to you today. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all of the great advice. And if you want Matt's new book, Escape, and bonuses from Robert Kiyosaki, please go to myescapebook.com. Get it for $4.
Very good. Thanks, Derek.
For those listening, if you enjoyed today's episode and have a few helpful takeaways, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you're using, and share this episode with your other business-minded friends. This has been another episode of the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast. We had fun today and hope you did too. Thanks again, Matt, for being here, and thank you for tuning in and listening. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is presented by Tramonte Financial Consultants, LLC. The firm is registered as an investment advisor and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Content should not be viewed as an offer to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned or as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. There are no assurances that a portfolio will match or exceed any particular benchmark. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss.